Hi,
Hello,
Dr.
hi, hi
Sandra
guys.
Rama. How are you? This is Melinda Roy. Welcome to day three Virtual Summit 2026. Hope you are enjoying our presentations.
Yes,
So,
thank you. My plane has just landed back in the UK in the last couple of hours. So unfortunately, I haven't had the privilege of watching because I've been airside. But thankfully, the plane was on time, so I managed to get here. So
thank you so much. And you are looking so pretty, ma'am. And
okay,
so
shall I
before
share my screen?
No, yeah, one second. Give me a moment. So before you start your presentation, so I
Okay,
would like to introduce you Dr. Satinder Sun on stage. She is an NHS family doctor, lifestyle medicine physician, coach, and founder dedicated to helping individuals achieve healthier, happier, and longer lives. So, with over 30 years of clinical experience and an inspiring personal journey of resilience, she combines evidence based medicine, lifestyle practices, and transformational coaching to empower lasting well being. Through her speaking, leadership, and advocacy, Dr. Satinder inspires audiences to embrace healthy aging, resilience, and purposeful living. So, this is the introduction of Dr. Satinder. The stage is all yours, and now you can share your screen now.
all right. Thank you so much. I barely recognised myself in that beautiful presentation you put on. That was very kind of you. Can you see that?
Yes, you can go ahead.
You can see that. That's great. Okay, so is it okay with those slides down the side, or should I present it as a slideshow?
It's better to show us the slideshow, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So here we go, everyone. Thank you again, Melinda. I really appreciate that introduction. And thank you guys. I can't thank you enough for taking up your valuable time to sort of to listen to me. I appreciate it. I really do. So I'd like us to perhaps take the time to explore the idea of being like water, adapting, encouraging your attention basically to flow towards hope, healing, and possibilities, because that's basically what I've done by accident, but I've kind of found through myself and my patients that it works. So I straddled two parallel roads over the last 40 years, one supporting hundreds of thousands of patients, and the other adapting through adversity but never being defined by it. This dual perspective of clinician and patient shapes and has shaped everything I do and everything I feel passionate about. So my approach blends obviously medicine, lifestyle medicine, the physiology of aging, transformational health coaching, neuroscience, neuron cellular plasticity, quantum energy, alongside I daren't say wisdom of lived experience because I've got more things wrong than I've got right, but certainly lived experience and also stories collected from over 100,000 patients. And the reason why this matters in this day and age is that we do know from international data that there is an explosion of chronic illness. We may be living longer, but we're spending probably the last up to 2 decades of our life with poor health. And it doesn't have to be like that. A lot of that is due to our lifestyle and our life course. The other thing I've noticed that's changed is that we experience a lot more exhaustion, overwhelm, and feeling stuck than I first witnessed when I started in general practice about 34 years ago. And more importantly, I see that a lot of very driven, caring professionals are struggling to navigate increasingly complex life and health conditions alongside their careers and relationships, because we've all got so much more on our plate, and we're we're developing these chronic diseases alongside. So my intention is to try and help you understand that you can navigate away from developing at least some major health conditions and even life burdens, or if these happen to fall upon you, as has happened with me time and again, you can flow through them. Your behaviors and your lifestyle, they definitely shape your life course and your health and your life health as well. more than you might think. And you can adapt to things that happen to you, and you can flow in a positive direction with a smile. You can be more than your diagnosis, and you can rewrite your limits by changing your beliefs, because with that, you change your behaviors. You also need to conquer your brain's reticular activating system. It's a very caring, kind system in your brain that likes everything to be very familiar and safe. The problem with that is that the places where you're most likely to grow are those areas where you have to experience a bit of fear. So, a lot of this presentation is going to be around conquering your fears, um, and also hope. To me, is something, if you can't get out of bed in the morning and have something to be hopeful for, then that's not going to be boding well for you. Having purpose and meaning are really important, and I've seen that with a lot of my patients over the years. So if you don't like this slide, you probably won't like this presentation, because frankly, as far as I've experienced and those around me, if you really want to have a good life, you do have to shift outside your comfort zone. And, there isn't an easy route to living well. I mean, I certainly didn't take the perfect route through life. But when I was expected to die at the age of 20, as a county athlete, a med student who was at 20 years of age, I was going to be a surgeon, I was going to travel the world. When I was expected to die, I actually came back from that coma, which I wasn't expected to do after having a catastrophic stroke. When I was expected then to be in a wheelchair and on benefits for the rest of my life, I returned to medicine. So I think that there is something to be said for tuning your attention in the direction of hope and possibility, which is what I did. I tuned out all the negativity and the naysayers that kept, and I didn't read any books or information about catastrophic stroke. I'm glad I didn't, because it would have terrified me. Instead, what I did is I'd like to say I flowed out my bed, but I didn't. I kind of dropped and fell and crawled out my bed in the middle of the night whilst I was an inpatient for 4 months. And I basically went through a lot of pain, a lot of hardship, to drag myself out that hospital and do my own kind of physio around the park, because I had my own idea in my head about my future direction. And that's what I was going to stick to, and nobody was going to say anything else. So I found alternative ways to move, to think, to get things done. I wrote my left hand because my right hand wasn't following through. I have limited movement in my right leg as well. I couldn't speak at all. I had to learn to speak again. And so I had to do basic things like learning to walk, learning to talk, fit in if I wanted to get back into medicine. And of course, nobody wanted me there, but I managed to get back in. And I keep being told, you're not normal. You shouldn't be here doing medicine. And the reason they say that is that picture of me is 2 weeks before my life changed forever. And the picture of the reverse image of the CT brain scan is my brain now and my brain for the last 40 years. And all that white stuff is scar tissue, is dead tissue. And as you can see, most of the left hemisphere is very, very dead. So most of this side of my brain is really not doing very much, with some damage to the right side. So how is it then that you can have a brain that looks like that and you can still live a life? So there's the question. And I personally think we should spend more time studying the not normal people, the outliers. I really do. And I do believe this quote. I don't know where it came from, but I like it. That massive characters and strongest souls are seared with scars. I mean, I've got a scar here, which was actually basically operated on twice in the last 3 months, because I've had 2 shoulder surgery joint replacements. I have scars elsewhere as well from various bits of me that have been removed or changed. So I do think that just because you might have a very thick medical history, or you've been through a lot of life traumas, it doesn't mean that you're a loser. You can actually become quite a massive positive character for good. So I'd like to hold on to that thought. I returned to medicine conquering 100-hour punishing rotas as a junior doctor, I needed to pick the toughest rotations because nobody wanted me there. You know, what was I doing there as a disabled doctor? It was very tough. I lived dangerously, but I did learn through that where my limits were. And it was either going to kill me or I was going to thrive. And I thought it was a risk I was prepared to take. I've been injured from experimenting with my limits, but boy, it's made me feel alive by trying my limits and realizing I can do more than people tell me I can do. I know that I've accelerated into severe osteoarthritis from years of throwing my lopsided body around. And I know I triggered autoimmune disease in my body with rheumatoid arthritis in recent years through the exhausting care I chose to give to my dying parents. But regarding my arduous physical activities and the adventurous pursuits, as I said before, they made me feel alive. And if you feel alive up here, then everything else flows for you. And as for my parents, well, love is love. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I live with my rheumatoid because I think I wanted to do it, because that's love, isn't it? So on to the next slide. This is quite important. And I would ask you guys to pay attention to your internal responses because things happen to us, don't they? For different reasons. So your external triggers won't be mine and your character traits won't be mine. But your internal responses are a result of things that trigger you over your lifetime and then your internal response to it. And then you throw into the mix your character traits, which is in my case, it's a triad of people pleaser, try hard, be strong, something, by the way, which is really commonly found in doctors. And you've got yourself potentially a ticking time bomb. So for me, I was born in 1965 in inner city Luton in England, a hotbed of racism. But I was all right because I kept telling people I didn't belong anywhere. I was a child of the universe. But even then, you don't feel you belong anywhere. You're othered. Assumptions are made about you. And then at the age of 20, I'm also a disabled Asian female in a hostile environment back in medical school. So there were a lot of external triggers, unkind words, gestures, dismissive remarks, being othered, etc., etc. And yes, that does have an effect on all of us. And for me, it was feeling lesser, having more to prove, and developing hypervigilance. And I have complex PTSD, but I deal with it. I'm just aware of it, but it doesn't stop me from getting on my life. But you need to be aware of it because there is a ticking time bomb. And I wish I had got help sooner than I did and accepted help. But the problem is that it's not always easy, is it? Because, sometimes we can't do what we really want to do because we have to be strong because we're trying to survive in the environment at the time. Yeah. Can you imagine if I'd run to the medical school HR department complaining and crying? They were desperate to get me out anyway, so I had to be tough. So I'm not saying that you necessarily can do the things you need to do to fix yourself at the time, but at some point you need to recognize that unresolved trauma, and I know you've been listening to a talk on this previously, that it can come back and bite you on the bum, or it can make you make bad decisions in your life, as I did. I didn't marry a man for love. I married him because I thought beggars couldn't be choosers, and I married him because I wanted to please my parents, even though they didn't want me to please them. So I'm going to give you some tips during this talk. And the first one is about being aware of chronic stress. It's a really big issue that underlines most of the chronic diseases that we're seeing in the modern day and age. So acute stress is good. Chronic stress, very, very, very bad. Chronic stress, you tend to have a lot of physical energy in your body, but it's not good energy. It's overworking the engine and the mind, and it can cause irreparable damage. So if you find yourself in situations where you think, yeah, I feel like I'm really like this, shake it off. I know, put on Taylor Swift's Shake It Off, or, whatever song or music you like, or have it in your head and dance and sing around the kitchen, or sing out loud, or go and, I don't know, do something physical, like take the dog for a brisk walk or go and dig over the garden. But if you can release that physical energy rather than internally damaging you, it will help to release and relax you back into a more calm, what we call parasympathetic rest digest state, which is where a lot of your healing and recovery and recreativity happen. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Next, they will hear a lot about this experiencing the fear and moving forwards anyway. As you can see, I did become a doctor because our history is not our destiny. And I want to talk about a couple of other concepts about courage not always roaring and about rewriting your limits. Let's start with the middle image. This is me less than 2 years after a stroke, which has left me with physical impairment down my whole of my right side of the body. But because I couldn't run anymore, I used to be a county runner, I reluctantly took up swimming, which I really didn't like, but I knew it'd be good for me. And within 2 years, I felt I was able to swim 100 lengths of a pool non-stop, doing front crawl, and I raised money for charity. I did it quietly, but somebody dobbed me into the press, and I ended up being in the Sunday Times magazine. And what I'm trying to say here isn't about, oh, look at me, I did this. It's about the fact that I was never really proud of this achievement, because for me, achievement is like, climbing K2 or doing an Ironman, and I thought, oh, I only swam 100 length, But I now realize, and I want you to realize this as well, that you should place your achievements within the context of your circumstances. Only you understand the enormity of your achievements and what it's taken out of you, your dedication, your sacrifice, the courage. It deserves a moment of your time. I wish I'd given myself a pat on the back, and acknowledge that, Satinder, that's actually a big deal. But I didn't. I kind of plodded on. But I'd like you to do that on my behalf, because we should all do that when we personally make a big achievement. The only validation you guys ever need is from yourselves, not externally. The last bit of that imagery is of me in a white coat, and that's me going off to Malawi about 3 years after my stroke. I did that on my own, and the reason I did it was because I always wanted to travel, but also because I needed to get away from all these people who remembered me as I was. And what I'm trying to say here is, if you feel you're being compared to your old self, then change your environment, even if it's for a bit. You'll be surprised what you learn. When I was out in Malawi, I hired a tent. I hitchhiked across to a really remote place. I lived on a campsite, and I used to travel to a very rural hospital where I worked. And I was surrounded by local people, strangers who had no idea who I was, no idea what happened to me, and no idea what I was like before my stroke. So they just took me literally as I am, the funny doctor with a gammy arm and a gammy leg. And that was it, full stop. But other than that, they accepted me, and I made great friendships. And what I learned was that stepping outside my comfort zone was a really nice short route back to reminding myself of my true identity, not the identity that those around me, my peers, my friends, my family, were trying to impose on me by remembering the old Satinder. Because Satinder has changed. We all change. So next, I would like to move on to something which I describe as living. And when you live, you do have to, as I keep saying, experience the fear and move outside your comfort zone. Now, I'd like to ask, what excites you? You might find that what it really excites you also might slightly terrify you. When you were young, you probably would have done it. But why don't you do it? Because you might be that bit older. If anything, we should be doing these things more as we get older. I mean, my backdrop is where I was this morning and the last couple of weeks sailing, and I'm covered in volcanic rock scars from tying shorelines and swimming and getting stabbed by sea urchins. But it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm absolutely shattered from it as well. And at times I was quite scared, but I felt really alive and I enjoyed it. And I keep doing it because I'm going back every year. So I decided after I qualified, or as a tail end of qualification, that I was going to go and live and work in New Zealand for 2 years. Now, I had married by this time, but I was in a controlling, coercive marriage, and he didn't care what I did at that point because we didn't have children. And I felt I was being trapped. But I also, as a result of stroke, felt I lived in a cage because I saw all these other able bodied people and I wanted to be like them. And I felt like I needed to get away and do something which made me feel, again, reclaim my identity. So I traveled to New Zealand. I only meant to go for 6 months to do a psychiatry rotation, but I stayed for just under 2 years. And I earned money doing jobs and paid my way. And I did some stuff that was more like me, like jumping out of aeroplanes, whitewater rafting down the highest raftable waterfall in the world, doing 4-day treks, carrying all my own kit on my own. That van, I used to sleep in the back of it, and as I was traveling around, and I loved the experience. And what's been great is it helped my inner wanderlust and my yearning for adventure. But also, those memories have been a compass for me every time when I'm feeling like I'm overwhelmed or when I'm on that hamster wheel of life. You know, the one where you find yourself living that moderate, complacent life, and you remind yourself, you think, no, there is another side of me. I have it in me. So it is useful, I think, to do these things at some point in our life. Now, this talk is about woe as well as wonder. And, you know, you remember the earlier slide, that ticking time bomb? Well, it came back to bite me. And this is me when I have had 2 young children, 2 boys born 18 months apart, separated from my family, my friends, living in a part of the country where I don't know anyone, living with a very controlling but very, very powerful professor. And on the outside, I was happy, clappy. I was doing really well in my new job as a junior partner at a very thriving rural general practice, which I ended up staying there for over 20 years. And I had lots of fun with my kids. I loved them to bits. So this is me to the outside world. But on the inside, I was dying. I literally didn't want to be here. That image is kind of how I was, often in the corner of a room, fetal position, wanting to end my life. But nobody knew because I'd become so good at internalizing my emotions because I'm a survivor. It's what I had to do because nobody was going to accept me in life the way I was with all my disabilities and stuff if I blah, 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 how I really felt. But this is how I felt inside. And I sadly, and I feel ashamed to say this, particularly because I had 2 small boys, I did nearly end my life. I took a car and I got very, very close to driving it over the edge of something I shouldn't have, but I didn't. And I won't go into details because I'm aware of time. But what I did do is I remember these guys and it saved my life. So I came back. But then I thought about it and I thought, well, you know, I can't be a beautiful fish in a toxic pond. So I got out with 2 small boys and a suitcase and I left. And I remarried eventually to a much kinder, lovely man. But then within a year, I discovered that because I'd done all those difficult jobs as a junior doctor, I had developed hepatitis C from needle stick injuries. And because it happened decades earlier, my liver was in end stage fibrosis and I was on a liver transplant list. And they were telling me yet again, you know, there's a chance that, you know, your life may be foreshortened. So I was doing extra jobs because I thought, what happens if I go? I need to support my kids. And I embarked on off and on 6 years of chemotherapy, but I was still working. I couldn't see patients for that part of that time, but I became a clinical NHS leader. And I made a decision. I could either get really depressed about all this, or I could follow the mantra, the fact that we are disturbed by the things that happen to us. It's the views we take of those things. So I got back into sailing with my wonderful new husband. I'd done a bit in New Zealand. I tried a bit of skiing, and when I had to give up work eventually because all the chronic stress had quietly been building a little adrenal tumor in my body, which wasn't actually picked up until years later, I was getting cardiac arrhythmias, uncontrolled high blood pressure, and I was begged to retire. You know, my colleagues and patients are saying, look, we don't want you to kind of like get carried out of this place in a body bag. So I reluctantly took ill health retirement at the age of 49, which is hard because I was a clinical leader, peak of my career. But again, I decided that I was going to move forward anyway. And so I decided that if I couldn't work, that I would do other things. One, I became a shepherd. As you can see, there's an orphan lamb. I got 10 of them because they were going to be dispatched. And my husband was very happy, but I got them anyway. And that was 17 years ago, and we still have them. We still have not those, but we still have sheep, and we lamb them every year. I carried on doing treks and carried on sailing. And I also decided that if I couldn't care for patients, then I was going to care for clients and run a charity. So I set up Serenity by digging up part of the small holding that we own, and I learned to landscape, and I did all the growing of the plants myself. And I converted the boys' old football pitch, they'd grown and left home by now, into a prairie garden for wildlife. I also developed rose gardens and a big wildlife pond, from which I managed to run the charity for people to support those with mental and physical health conditions. But I always wanted to return to medicine, and I did eventually during the pandemic in 2020, and I've been working as a GP ever since. So alongside of all of this, I was by this time 54 years old when I returned to general practice in the early 2020, and during the pandemic, actually 2022. And what I hadn't appreciated, and I think it's really important, this is that there are things happening all along our life which start to really kick off around midlife in all of us. It's obviously aging, there's inflammation. Chronic inflammation is a big cause of major health conditions on the planet. Oxidative stress is driven by a lot of lifestyle choices we make. Then, of course, there's hormonal imbalance, which, by the way, happens in both men and women at midlife. And then there's DNA and telomere changes that happen to us all. And we can do something about all of those things, even the aging and the DNA stuff. Now, around menopause, and this applies to men with testosterone levels, and women it's estrogen, there are changes happening to really important endocrine organs, which control the balance, the homeostatic balance in your bodies. And our bodies can rapidly become out of balance and develop significant health conditions if we don't reset our lifestyle and our life course. As you can see, there are unexpected hormones that matter in reducing health chaos. Our gut, our pancreas, even our kidneys, our liver, our ovaries, obviously, pituitary and thyroid, really important. And that's where, for example, sleep regulation comes in. But it's where all the pillars of health are really important in reducing the symptoms that men and women experience. Why is it, do you think, in blue zones in the world, there are countries that do not even have a name for the menopause? They don't get hot flushes. So it's not a thing that is inevitable that you have to experience this. I mentioned chronic inflammation and how dangerous that is. Look at the causes of it. Now, these are all reversible and preventable. You just need to think about, what am I eating? What am I putting in my mouth? What am I doing to my gut microbiome? How long am I sitting in this chair? Can I get up a little bit more? What about my chronic stress? What about all those external agents that we put on our skin, the microplastics we're consuming, that are in the Tupperware boxes that we store all our food in, etc., etc.? Because you can see from the consequences here that these are the big hitting diseases that most people will experience at some point in their life. And I'm including in this things like dementia as well. People think dementia is something you have no control over, but a lot of the causes of dementia are the same as the causes that are related to things like heart disease and stroke. And don't forget about stress. It's so important because I ask you a question here. How many of you are loading your body with more busyness, not probably eating as well as you should, not sleeping as well, perhaps some anxious anxiety, poor posture? When do you unload? During your day, every day? Are you drinking enough water? Are you thinking about nutrition, movement, relaxing, and that important thing called positive attitude? Because if you're not, you're going to have the law of diminished returns. And this is what the stress adaptation response is about. Low energy, reliance on things like caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, sugar, shopping, overworking. This is what happens when you're entering the world of diminished returns. Fatigue, irritability. Have you found that you're getting more frequent colds and flu recently, or poor immune health? Think about what might be driving that. So, as you can see, physical health challenges, life events, I've experienced them all, but it doesn't have to define you. You can be still more than your diagnosis. There is overlooked journey as well. Nobody asked how if I was okay, explained that pain left unattended has physical consequences, or explained that I could do something about it. And I have all these bits of my body wrong with me and more. But here I am. I'm happy and I'm working and I NHS GP, still do my life stuff, but I'm also run my business as well now, Grow Your Life. So, I have a very full active life. So don't forget the dimensions of healthy aging. And I've put purpose in a big coloured box here because to me, that's the thing that drives everything else. It really is. And I did a post on LinkedIn recently, which was all about why is being a specialist hot? Everybody's niching, but I honestly think that we need more clinicians who take a whole health approach because your past life, your lifestyle, all these things all interconnect and have a consequence on your health and well-being, which is why I've done all my additional certificates and qualifications and why I understand about why the brain chooses familiar over unknown and why we need to kick against that. So it's what I do. It's I support professionals who feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and stuck, who have complex health and life issues. And you'll find on the resource section, there's a couple of free gifts for you. There's a bonus e-guide on how you can overcome stress and get through your day. There's a scan QR code you can use, or you can go on my website, growyourlife.health, and you can click the link there. And I'm also offering over the next few weeks free 45 minutes consultations for anybody. There's no strings attached. It's just if anybody would like to just talk about stuff. And you can either get it by clicking on the QR code or going to growyourlife.health. What I've learned, I didn't invent the light bulb. 1,000 ways to get it wrong first. Find your ikigai, as the Japanese say, that dependable life raft, which will help you through life's rapids. And you can read the rest. I know I'm out of time and I do apologize. But basically, change occurs when you become who you are and not when you're trying to be what you're not. Okay. And don't forget those you love, but choose to spend more time with people who give you positive energy, not the dementors who suck the energy out of you. Just a hint there. And I'm asking you a question here. Well, who do you want to become? What small daily habit are you going to start to do to help you on that little journey? And what are you grateful for? There's so much evidence about how gratitude daily practice just for 5 days can make such an impact for weeks and months ahead. Got to show you this. Charlie Brown, I love him in Peanuts. Your mind-body connection, how you hold yourself can have an effect on how you feel. It's why Charlie Brown says, if you're going to get any joy out of being depressed, you got to stand like this. I want to thank you for your time. I apologize profusely for overrunning. I really do, particularly to the next speaker, and also a little message at the end for you guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Satin, for sharing the wonderful PowerPoint presentation along with the detailed explanation of each slide. And so there are multiple questions from the audience. I will pick two questions for you. How does positive psychology support emotional well-being?
Because at the end of the day, we are the product of what our brains receive the information about. So if your brain receives information that the world is unsafe, the world is out to get you, then that is how your body and your mind is going to respond. But if you choose to give your brain a different narrative through positive attitude and positive psychology, then your body will follow through. There's some interesting research from Bruce Lipton in a book about cellular biology about how positive attitude can literally change your body cells in a positive way, the protein with structures within those. And of course, now we have things like functional MRI scans, which are showing how your brain changes for the better. Because the other thing you have to remember is there's a bit of your brain called the hippocampus, which stores a lot of your memory. And the more you have negative thoughts and traumatic, sad emotions, the more that affects things like your memory and your cognitive function. So it doesn't serve you well, to go through life with negative emotions. But it all starts with having a genuine belief that you are more than what everybody tells you you are. And you are. I can promise you you are.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you so much for answering this question, ma'am. One more question for you. So, what message would you give someone currently facing adversity?
Talk to somebody that you trust and who's a good listener. And listening is really hard, actually. You know, I mean, listening in order to try and create understanding, that's really hard because people, when they listen, they always have an idea or a view, don't they, that they want to give you and share. But that's not what you need. You just need somebody who is going to listen and reflect back what it is you're really saying. And I say that because I wish I'd done that at the time, because I wouldn't have made the bad choices that I made. But I'm so sorry, whoever who's said put that in, that you are experiencing adversity. I really am. But as I say, I'm offering some free sessions, 45 minutes. I can listen to you for that length of time. I know it's not enough, but yeah, find somebody who you trust, respect, and who will really listen to you, but not have an opinion, but just will to listen to try and create understanding of your situation. And I'm sorry you're going through that.
Yes, ma'am. I completely agree with your answer. So, thank you so much for joining this and sharing your great presentation with the Global 2026 Day 3 event. So, we look forward speakers like you for our future conferences as well. So, please do join our next sessions, and keep encouraging our next speakers as well. Thank you. And other speaker, Benita, is already in the backstage. So, she's waiting. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye. And I'm so sorry I held everybody up.
It's
Sorry about
okay.
that. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye, everyone.